On today's show, can Anthony Davis push the Mavericks into the playoff picture? Yes, but the next 6 games are going to tell us if they will on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm going to get a city like that.
Dogs, all of us, all 5.
You are Locked On Mavs, your daily Dallas Mavericks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Still can't leave me alone.
Your team every day.
Gotta be born with it, dog gut.
And welcome, you're locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member covering the Dallas Mavericks for 10 years. Thanks for being an everydayer, making Locked On Mavs your first listen. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It's FanDuel.com. Today's episode, we're going to talk about, can Anthony Davis push the Mavericks into the playoff picture? I think he can, but the next 6 games will determine it. Talk about Kyrie Irving's surgery, and we'll also potentially talk about Max Christie and how he can get back to being a solid role player for the Dallas Mavericks. I'm joined today by my puppy co-host, and I promised him I would give him turkey if he sat there. There you go. Let's start here. Boys, girls, and dogs. The next 6 games of the Dallas Mavericks season. Stop me if you've heard this before. The next 6 games of the Dallas Mavericks season will define their season. It's a trope I've used every single season this year where there's a stretch of games where I look at it and I go, you know what? The Mavs, they need to win these next 6 games, or these next 6 games will determine what we think about this Dallas Mavericks team and what this Dallas Mavericks team is capable of this season. Well, this team has changed so much this season that stretch of games changes and just has changed. And maybe you're sitting there saying the Luka trade already defined the season. The injuries already defined the season. Sure. But the Mavs are still fighting for something. That's why Anthony Davis came back. It's why they're still playing these games. It's why they haven't forfeited games yet. Like, they're still trying to go for something. They're still trying to play to get in that play-in, to eventually make the playoffs, and to salvage this season in some feasible way. It's probably not going to be enough. Whatever they end up doing, it's probably not going to be enough for you. And that's fine. The Mavs are going to try it anyway. So I've got to try to analyze and look at, all right, well, what are they capable of, and how can we figure out if they are going to be able to get to where they want to go, which is a first-round series against the Thunder. Honestly, that is the goal for this Mavericks team, because that's the highest they can get, the first-round series against the Thunder. And then at that point, you're talking about, can they beat one of the best regular season teams we've ever seen? Yikes. But I think, to me, the next 6 games could determine if the Mavericks will get there or not. Right now, in this, you're looking at it in the standings, the Mavs are they're a half game back from the Suns, but the Suns are, as I'm recording this, they're losing to the Celtics by 1 million, and so the Mavs are going to be tied again with the Suns, but the Suns have the tiebreaker, so they'll be ahead. The Suns will be 10th, and the Mavs will still be 11th. But you look at these next 6 games for the Dallas Mavericks. Start with Orlando, then Chicago, then Brooklyn, then Atlanta. Got those 4 games are crucial, because I think the Mavs can take a couple of those games. And then all of a sudden, maybe you jump over Phoenix. Phoenix's next 4 games are Minnesota, Houston, Milwaukee, and Boston. Tough. And then you got the Clippers 2 games. And I think those games could tell us if the Mavericks could potentially get out of the play-in. Clippers are out of the play-in as of right now, but they could be back into it. They're a playoff quality team. So let's see what this Mavericks team looks like if they maybe get a Lively or a Gafford back. But let's start with these first 4 games. They start with Orlando on the 27th. On Thursday, if you're listening to watching this on Thursday, they play tonight against Orlando. An earlier game, Orlando is 6-3 in their last 9. They went on a great stretch to start the season. Then they had Franz and Paolo both out for a while. From December 6th to December 3rd to March 6th, they were 14-28. That's terrible. That is a no good, terrible record for the Orlando Magic. But in their last 9, they're 6-3. They've kind of turned it around. They've got some quality wins in there. Paolo's averaging 31 points. Franz Wagner's averaging 22, 7, and 5. And they figured out some things. The thing about this Orlando Magic team is they struggled to score. And if Anthony Davis is back and he plays in this game, then all of a sudden the Mavs hopefully can find a way to shut it down, shut the rim down for them. They'd have to just win a shooting battle, and Orlando has not won a lot of shooting battles this season. And hopefully the Mavericks scrounge up enough points against Orlando's excellent defense that they can find a way to win that game. But either way, it's not like Orlando's a juggernaut right now. So a game that you look at and go, all right, not easy, but not 100% difficult. You're not playing OKC or Boston or Cleveland. And so you look at the game and you're like, all right, That's the first test for this Dallas Mavericks team. And I think it's great. When Anthony Davis was back against the Nets, that was a good, welcome back game. This could be a good test game. All right, you're back and you're playing. Let's see what this Mavericks team is capable of. It looked like Anthony Davis opened up everything on offense. Looked like he allowed everybody to play their roles on defense, and he changed a lot for this Mavericks team. How does he do it against a playoff level team? Orlando could be the first test for that. And I guess Orlando is playoff level. They're 8th in the East, and they're 3 games below 500. I guess it's a playoff team. 8th. They're the 8th seed. They're 3 games below 500. The East, man. Then the Mavericks play Chicago on March 29th, 2 days after the Orlando game. Chicago has actually been pretty good recently. They are 8 games under 500 right now. They're 9th in the East. They've been terrible all season, but they're 8-2 in their last 10. Josh Giddey has emerged onto the scene as a solid player for them, averaging 22 points, 8 boards, 9 assists in his last 12 games. He's had some really good scoring games in that too. Some 27, some 30s, stuff that you didn't think Josh Giddey could do. And then you have Kobe White, who's just been lights out, had a 40-point game in this last stretch, but averaging 29 points in the last 13 games for the Bulls. So you've got those two guys with the dynamic duo for the Bulls. And I think you've got some good options to defend those guys. Maybe Caleb Martin comes back and maybe he can defend Kobe White, and that would be nice. Or Josh Giddey. PJ Washington defending Giddey. Max Christie on Kobe White. We'll talk about him a little bit later. You've got some options there. The Mavs have to figure that out. They also have to figure out the Vucevic thing. But if the Mavs put a Kai Jones, or hopefully maybe even if a Lively is back, we don't know for sure, but we'll see. Then all of a sudden you put him on Vooch, and then all of a sudden you've got AD to roam around and to cause havoc against the Giddies, the Kobe Whites, the whoever else, and to help against those guys. And so Chicago is not an easy out. They look like an easy out because they're 8 games under 500, but they're 8-2 in their last 10. They've played really hard this last stretch. But a winnable game for sure. Then the Mavs play Brooklyn on the 31st. We've already seen this Mavericks team play Brooklyn, and if AD plays, it's an automatic win. Right? And it has to be an automatic win. If it's not, then that defines the season, and then they're done. Because I just think that if you lose that Brooklyn game, pack it up. You're going home. It just makes me think of the toy soldiers in Toy Story, where they're packing up the baby monitor. Pack it up, boys. We're going home. That's it. You lose the Brooklyn Nets. That's it. Then the Mavs play April 2nd against Atlanta. Atlanta, too, is 7-3 in their last 10. What is up with the Mavs playing these teams that are good in their last 10 games, except Brooklyn? They're bad overall, but good in their last 10 all of a sudden. These teams that try. But anyway, Atlanta 7-3 in their last 10. Trae Young's averaging 27 points, 11 assists in their last 10 games. They also play Onyeka Okongwu at center for 32 minutes. And Anthony Davis has destroyed them. He's already played the Hawks twice this season. He averaged 28 points, 14.5 boards, 6 assists, and 4.5 blocks and steals combined against the Hawks this year. So he has destroyed them. If Anthony Davis plays against the Hawks, the Mavs should win that game. Starting to see a trend here. None of those games are back-to-backs either. So you hope Anthony Davis can play in all 4 of those games. If the Mavs can play in all 4 of those games, and they come away 3-1 in those games, and the Suns against Minnesota, Houston, Milwaukee, and Boston, if they go 1-3 and the Mavs go 3-1, then all of a sudden they flip, and the Mavs are back up in 10th, and all of a sudden you're talking. And that's why I'm saying that this next 6 games could define the season, because these 4 games, the Mavs have a real opportunity to pass the Suns. The Suns have had a really good tear recently, but they left a big stinker against the Boston Celtics, who didn't have Jason Tatum. Really bad. They're going to lose this game by 30-something. Tough. They already have... is that a Bull appearance on there? Bull's actually played for them. But so the Mavs' next 4 games and the Suns' next 4 games, you look at all those, and that's massive. Then also you have the Sacramento Kings, who are 35-37 all of a sudden. It's not like the Sacramento Kings have been world beaters. They've been losing a lot recently too. And they have Portland, Orlando, Indiana, and Washington. Then Charlotte. That's tough. That's why I brought up the Suns before I brought up the Kings, because Portland, Orlando, Indiana, Washington, Charlotte, the Washington-Charlotte game should just be gimmies for the Kings. They should absolutely win those games. But you're looking now, we're doing standings watch. You're just looking at these games, and honestly, I'm focused only on the play-in, because that's what the Mavs are going for. You can go through the tank standings, and you can go through where the Mavericks are, and right now they would have the 12th pick, and they're 2.5 games ahead of Chicago. So, oh man, the Mavericks should want to lose this Chicago game to pass them in the tank. The Mavs aren't doing that. They're not looking at the tank standings. You heard Anthony Davis after the game against the Nets. They are looking at the Suns, and these players and the coaches and definitely the front office and probably the front office too are all looking at these standings to see where they can be. And so that's what I'm looking at for the Mavs too. And it might not be the best long term for this team, but short term and where they are right now, they're going to go for it. It's admirable. The players are never going to give up anyway. The Mavs are too injured to just sit a bunch of them. And so they're going to go for it, and they're going to try it. And we'll see if they can salvage the season. But I think these next 6 games determine it. I've talked about 4. Let's get to the next 2. The Mavs play against the Clippers 2 times. How does that determine the Maverick season? I'll tell you coming up. Today's Locked On Mavs. Locked On Mavs. Today's episode of Locked On Mavs brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook has all kinds of props and odds that you can use to get in on the action. Oh, that's right. March Madness is here. FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. New customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Go check that out. See how you can use the extra bucks on anything across college basketball, the NBA, all of that. Go check it out. See what is available for you. You can do the parlay builder. That's pretty fun. You got a whole bunch of stuff like that. The finals odds. I haven't looked at these in a while. Thunder plus 175. Celtics plus 185. Cavs plus 490. And then huge drop off. Nuggets plus 1,800. Lakers plus 1,800. Warriors plus 2,000. Mavericks plus 100,000. Is that 100,000 or a million? 100,000. So you bet $10 on the Dallas Mavericks to win the finals, and Anthony Davis pulls it off for the Mavericks somehow. They win the finals as the 10th seed. You win $10,000. What a deal that would be. Check it out, FanDuel. See what is available for you. Visit FanDuel.com. Get into the college hoops and the NBA all tournament long, all playoffs long. Please gamble responsibly at FanDuel. Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, what we call our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you for checking out the show. We have a daily newsletter for you. Go check out the daily newsletter, lockedondaily.com. See how you can get fantasy info. You can get all kinds of other stuff too. And you can get that sent daily free to your inbox, lockedondaily.com for the newsletter. We also have a live show April 8th at Four Corners Brewery, the day before the Lakers and the Mavericks play. Luka returns to Dallas. We'll want to all commiserate, join together, therapy session, whatever you want to call it. We're going to all be there 7 o'clock at Four Corners Brewery. Join us. Join us. All right. The next 6 games determine the Mavericks season. Isaac has made fun of me every single time I do this topic, but I hold true to it. One year I did it. I said these next 6 games or 7 games define the Mavs season. And KP got injured during that stretch, and I'm like, it did. It defined the season because they lost KP and they were never the same. I stand by it. Mavs can win these next 4 games. Suns could lose any of the next 4 games, and if they all of a sudden flip records over the next 4 games with Anthony Davis back, that's massive. But then that's just the first step. The first step is to get back in the play-in. You're already starting from behind if you're the Mavericks. You're bringing AD back, but you're starting from behind because you're already behind the Suns. You don't have the tiebreaker. You've got to finish ahead of them. You can't tie with them. So if they do that, I think they can do it in these next 4 games. And then you have 2 games after that, both against the Clippers. A back-to-back, both in LA, at the Clippers' new Intuit Dome. You get to see that, get to see the wall, get to see James Harden. Maybe Kawhi Leonard plays in one of those games. Clippers defense, Chris Dunn. Oh, I miss seeing Luka be mad at Chris Dunn. It's one of my favorite things when Luka just get mad at these random role players. But we get to see this, and I think these are the 2 games when if the Mavs, hopefully they have, hopefully AD's still playing. They have Lively, Gafford back potentially. This is how we could see, all right, this Mavericks team is now different, viable, better, a decent defense, a good defense maybe even, an okay offense that can just score enough. Can they beat a playoff caliber team? Could they possibly beat a Clippers team in a play-in game if they need to? Because they're tied right now. The Clippers are tied right now with the Warriors. They could fall right down, and they're only a half game up on the Timberwolves. The Clippers could absolutely be in the play-in. And so I think you get this opportunity right now to say, all right, how do we match up against this Clippers team? You get some film on them. You get to see what this Mavericks team is made of. This Mavericks team is not like a set, ready team, ready to just get healthy and then be unleashed. Still got to figure out some of the things that what this team is. Still got to figure out how AD fits into the offense, how a center plays next to him. He's played next to Gafford for like 12 minutes so far. He hasn't played next to Lively at all. Hopefully they get him back before one of these games. But if they don't, then that's going to be interesting to see how that all these pieces fit together, to see how AD transforms and changes this team. And those two Clippers games could be big tests. Could be really big tests, especially against a defense. As good as the Clippers. Can the Mavs offense do enough against a team like that? Then maybe you prove something to yourself. And then maybe that instills a bunch of confidence in these guys. They look at the game right after that. Oh, what's the game right after the Clippers games? The Luka return game, the Lakers game. Huge. We'll talk about that here in a second, but I'm very curious to see how the Mavericks play in those two. They could be back in 10th, and the Clippers could be 7 or 8, and all of a sudden these two games are like, all right, this is kind of a play-in preview for the Mavericks. The Mavs could win that first game against the Kings, and then all of a sudden they're playing the Clippers in that next game to see if they can be they can jump in there and be the 8th seed. Massive. I'm curious how the Mavericks do against Zubats. Even because Zubats has been really good for the Clippers at center this year. Anthony Davis, Lively, Gafford potentially. How they defend him. How they play against him. Luka used to just cook him, right? And so now it's a different calculus for the Mavericks. How do they fare like that? The Mavs used to just let Harden run by Luka, like right the drive-by stuff, the blow-by stats that people were bringing up, and they would just let him take floaters at the rim. With AD roaming around, I don't think they're going to do that anymore. I think that's different. Now they have a defensive player of the year monster to run around to block that shot and not give him the satisfaction of getting a wide open shot right at the rim, right? I'm curious to see who defends a James Harden. Who's out there doing that? Does Klay Thompson get that assignment? Does a PJ Washington get it? He's the 3. Does he move down and they put some size on James Harden? Does a Max Christie get to step up and try that role? Does a Caleb Martin, maybe he's healthy again. He's listed. He's looking like he's working his way back for the Mavericks. Does he get to do that? So that's something that I'm really curious to see from the Mavericks. A playoff level team, really good defense. Mavericks back to what they are going to be for this season, I guess. Back to, with AD back. How do they look against a team like that? So that's the next 6 games. This is my thesis today. The next 6 games will determine the Mavericks season, because you win 3 of those 4 games that I just talked about, and then you can prove that you can beat a Clippers team, then maybe you're feeling confident going into that play-in. And you're looking at that play-in going, all right, let's do it. Let's win the play-in, be the first 10th seed to make it. And heck, they're only a half game back from the Kings right now. They could be the 9th seed. Things go well. The Sacramento Kings blow a couple more games. Kings are only 2-8 in their last 10. It's not like they're doing anything amazing either. And so maybe the Mavs get to the 9th seed even. But I am just really curious to see how this all shakes out in these next 6 games. Because then you have those 6 games. Mavericks could have some momentum. Feeling all right about the team that they are. Okay, maybe they've 6 games. Maybe they're 4-2 in those 6 games. Okay, feeling good. Then you play Luka and the Lakers. The Mavs have 3 days off before that game. That is going to be agonizing. I don't know about you. I'm going to be spending. We're going to be spending so much time on this show talking about that game and thinking about that game, and I know you probably will too. The Lakers have a back-to-back the night before. They play at the Thunder the night before they play the Mavericks. The Mavs have 3 days off. The Mavs are going to be energized, and I'm curious who's going to feel the emotion during that game. Who's going to feel it the most? Is it going to be Luka feeling the love and feeling the vitriol towards Nico? Is that going to fuel him, or is that just going to make him happy and then we don't see angry Luka necessarily? Or maybe he sees Nico Harrison somewhere and it's like a bull seeing red and all of a sudden he goes off. We didn't see that in that first game that the Mavs played against the Lakers. We saw it here a little bit and we just saw Luka be Luka. It wasn't like an insane Luka game. He was still working his way back. Well, that's going to be wild. So you got these 6 games, and then you have this game against Luka, where the Mavs have 3 days off, and the Lakers are playing a second night of a back-to-back. just schedule-wise, that's a win for the Mavs. 3 days off, and then the other team has a second night of a travel back-to-back where they're in OKC for 2 games. They play, so the Lakers, this is their schedule. April 4th, they play home against New Orleans. Then a day later, then they have a day off, and then they play April 6th at Oklahoma City, a day off in Oklahoma City. Then they play Oklahoma City again on the 8th. Then they travel to Dallas on April 9th. It's not a terrible travel schedule, but it's not great. And it's not like an easy one either. That's going to be fascinating. Who feels the emotions? Who's coming at who's ready to play? I think the Mavs will want to prove a lot in that game. Will the Lakers want to prove the same? I think the Mavericks will just think about how Anthony Davis and PJ Washington approached that game against the Rockets. And think about the fan response and your response to that first game. Their protests. I'm sure there's going to be protests again during the Lakers game. We'll talk about that during our live show, April 8th at Four Corners Brewery, the day before the Mavs play the Lakers. We'll probably have that game on, the Lakers Thunder game. National TV game, the Mavs and Lakers, obviously ESPN game, huge. Game's at 6:30, by the way, too. Early start. Fascinating. Next 6 games determine the Mavericks season. Then they play the Lakers. The Mavs then have 2 games after that. 2 games after that. They play Toronto and Memphis, and who knows if Memphis is even playing for anything at that point. Toronto's no good. So Mavs could win those next 2 games, and then that's why I'm like, all right, these 6 games, then the Lakers game, then the 2 last games. That's the Mavs. That's the rest of the Mavs season. Coming up, let's talk about Kyrie, and let's talk about Max Christie. I want to talk about what's Max Christie's path back to being a really good quality player for the Mavericks. We'll talk about that and more coming up.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Explain yourself.
Sorry.
The explain yourself was for me. I forgot to take out that last bumper with Luca in it. Hold on, I got to feed my co-host real quick. There you go. I'm feeding him turkey to keep him in that chair. All right, let's talk about Kyrie Irving. He had a successful surgery, according to Shams Charania. It was successful, and they announced it. First thing that I read was they also announced the surgeon that did the surgery. I'm like, Shams and Woj recently started to announce the agent when they announced these deals and free agency deals and trades and things like that. They would announce the agent, like, to give him a little, here's a little extra, like, here's a, thank you for giving me that info. And now they're naming the surgeons that did the surgeries on these players. He went to hospital for special surgery in New York City. Surgery was performed by HSS Chief of Sports Medicine, Dr. Riley J. Williams. And I have inside info on this. One of our Locked On Mavs text line subscribers, check the QR code, the link to find that. Edwin, shout out to Edwin, one of our text line subscribers, said that's the #1 hospital for orthopedic surgery in the nation. They specialize in fast track recovery. I know this because I got my hip replacement done 13 years ago by the chief of surgery back then. I'm glad Kyrie did the surgery under that medical staff. What an honor that doctor got to operate on Kyrie. Yeah, I agree with him. That's kind of crazy. So yeah, there you go. They specialize in fast track recovery, and now Kyrie's recovery starts 8 to 12 months probably. So we'll see how he goes through it. Kyrie quote tweeted the Shams report today with the Terminator gif, "I'll be back." He seems to be in good spirits. If you've seen any of his streams or anything like that, he's had some crazy wild quotes that, not wild, ridiculous things that he's saying, just like wild, funny, like out of pocket, just funny stuff from Kyrie. Going after people who said anything bad about his family, and he's just not holding back. So Kyrie seems to be all right. He seems to be ready to come back, or ready to work his way back, and there's a long road ahead of him. So we'll see what happens with him and his recovery. But it was good that they announced his surgery. And honestly, like, I'm going to go Twitter doctor here. I'm glad that his surgery was early. I'm glad that he did it now and didn't wait till the summer or something like that, right? So I think that's a positive to me. Okay, Max Christie. I've been thinking about him for a while because he's 22 years old. He was a second-round pick, the 35th pick. He's in year 3. He's an interesting player. He's kind of a 3-and-D player. He can shoot the 3, can play defense pretty well, but he can kind of get his own shot too here and there. And when he first joined the Mavericks, he went on this tear that we just had not seen from him. His first 7 games for the Mavericks, he averaged 17 points a game, shooting 52% from the floor, 47% from 3. He was taking about 11 shots a game, 5 threes a game, getting the free throw line 3.5 times. Like, he was just playing really great. And then he kind of tailed off, and it kind of came back down to earth a little bit. His last 16 games, he's only averaged 9 points on 35% from the floor and 32% from three. That's not good shooting splits. So maybe just having an off shooting time, but we've watched him. We know that it's not just him missing open shots. He's taken 2 less shots a game, same amount of threes, and 2.5 less free throw attempts. So he's just not been as aggressive. Kyrie has also been out for 11 of those 16 games that I just talked about. And he did have an 18-point game and a 17-point game in there on back-to-back games against the Sixers and the Pacers. So it's not like he's been absolutely horrible and there's been no signs of life, and it was just a random 7-game stretch where he looked really good for the Mavericks. And so he had that stretch of 7 games where he looked really good, and then these last 16 where it's just been really up and down and a lot of down. What's his path back to being a quality role player for the Mavericks, to finding his groove, getting his groove back to where he was before? I think there's a couple things. First of all, just assertiveness. From what I've seen from Max Christie, he should be confident in his game, and the Mavs need offense. They need somebody to step up. They need somebody to get buckets. They're having Najee Marshall take 25 shots in a game. They're having PJ Washington take 20 shots in a game, right? Like, there's just not a reason for Max Christie to not be a little more aggressive in the offense and to take more shots and to take more opportunities for himself. Take advantage of any mismatch he has. Think about some of the opportunities. Think about some of the plays he's had where he just goes at somebody over and over again. He's like, all right, got a mismatch on me, I'm just going to go for it. Got a big or a small guard on me, I'm going to take advantage of it. And we haven't really seen that same level of assertiveness. I've seen him pass up shots, seen him pass a little bit too much. It's not make the extra pass, it's like overpassing. And so that's something that you need to see from him, is just assertiveness. Just come back and play more confident. You could say that about literally any player ever in the NBA except for, I don't know, Tim Hardaway. I think also playing off of AD, both on offense and on defense, is going to change his world. Dallas is going to need Max Christie on the Kobe Whites, the Franz Wagners, the Trey Youngs, the James Harden, like the guys like that. They're going to play in these next 6 games that I just talked about. I think they're going to need Max Christie to play a lot of minutes and to defend those guys, because he has done a good job in those first 7 games. Man, he was playing some really good defense too. He's good under the rim. He's got good hands. He doesn't foul a ton. Like, it's something that the Mavs really need. They need him to step up in these next 6 games. And I think that one thing to remember about Max Christie, and it wasn't his scoring that awarded him the starting spot for the Lakers. JJ Redick didn't look at Max Christie and go, man, he's crushing it, killing it, scoring the ball. We've got to put him in our starting lineup. It was the other things. It was the way he fits into a lineup. It was the way that he plays defense. It was the way that he just does a bunch of different things. And JJ Redick looked at that and said, we need a change in this starting lineup, because the Lakers were not going anywhere great. They didn't look like they had any juice at all. And Max Christie was averaging 5.8 points, shooting 42% from the field and 29% from three in the 22 games he played with the Lakers this season before JJ Redick put him in the starting lineup. So it's not like he was shooting the ball really well. It's not like he had a stretch like he had for the Mavericks, where he was dominating, and all of a sudden, like, JJ Redick looked like, all right, I got to start this guy because he's just playing so well. He saw other things in him. And the Mavs are going to need those other things, the things that JJ Redick saw in Max Christie before he inserted him into the starting lineup. By the way, when he got put in the starting lineup with Anthony Davis, he averaged 11 points, shooting 45% from the floor and 39% from three. Now, he's also playing with LeBron James, so that probably helped his three-point shooting a lot. But my point is, playing off of Anthony Davis, both on offense and on defense. On defense, he can take more chances. You know that you've got the confidence that there's a backline defense behind you. That's not Kessler Edwards. Sorry, Kess, but I'm not trying. The difference between you and Anthony Davis is insane defensively. And so he knows that he can hold his ground. And if he holds his ground, then the Mavs will hold up defensively. Or if he gets beat, he can switch real quick and go back and, doesn't have to just completely sell out. So Max Christie, I think these next 6, 7, these last 9 games of the season are fascinating to see where he is, because I think he has a real shot to be maybe a starter next season. Klay Thompson will probably still be the starter, but they could look at it and want somebody like Max Christie who can get his own shot a little bit more than Klay can. And maybe they'll look at that and they'll want that. But I'm fascinated to see his next couple of games and see where he is. That's his path back to where he was when he first joined the Mavericks. And I don't think he'll get back to 17 points a game, right? He was shooting insanely well. But I think he can get to the middle of these two Max Christies that we've seen. Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs. Again, live show April 8th, right before the Mavs play the Lakers. We'll have that for you. Go check out the text line, the Locked On Mavs text line that we mentioned. We also have the Mavs newsletter, lockedondaily.com. You can go check out that as well. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs. We'll have post-game shows for every single one of these post-games, all the ones that define the Mavericks season. We'll have those with me and Slightly and Isaac. We'll also have off-day episodes as well. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.